Good evening. I'm Hope Preston, and this is the monthly speaker presentation for the Washington County Master Gardeners. And tonight, our presentation is by Todd Anderson on broadening your plant palette. As you can see from the pictures, um, Todd is going to tell us about some interesting and different things we can grow, such as sweet potatoes, ginger, turmeric, and lemongrass. Todd is originally from Sacramento, but has lived and gardened in Hawaii and the central coast of California. So I guess he actually has some experience with these different fruits and vegetables he's going to teach us about. And I'm very interested to hear some of these that we what we can do in our gardens so that we can successfully grow these fruits and vegetables. Um, the presentation will take 45 or 50 minutes, and then there will be time for questions at the end. If you would please put your questions in the Q&A section, not in the chat section, and then I will sort through them and give give Todd a chance to answer them at the end. And Todd, I think, are you ready to kick this off?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right, great.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Thank you, Hope. I'm Todd Anderson. So in my day job, I'm actually a professor here at Oregon State University. I work in extension, so I work with farmers, and I'm the statewide organic tree fruit and nut specialist. But today I come here as a hobbyist. When I'm not growing plants for work, which are fruit trees and nuts, I tend to be experimenting what I can do in my garden. It's been mostly food heavy crops. In this presentation, I'm trying to both emphasize the edible crops that you can grow, and then also give you tools on how to grow non-edibles and perennial crops that I may not have covered in the past. Now that I'm a homeowner, I have a little bit of space to mess around with. I've been growing hardy bananas and some gingers, so let's get started. And everything up on this picture, except for the one on the right, that's ginger I grew in my old community garden plot. That's taro. That was at the community garden plot in a large uh, black bin, which is something we'll talk about later. And then that's green eggplant, a Filipino type eggplant, peppers, just zucchini squash, and then some sweet potatoes I grew as well. Oop. So we're going to be kind of going over what are subtropical crops, explore the concept of zone pushing. So what is the idea of pushing the zone or the creating a different climate for plants that you're growing? What are subtropicals? What are some drier climate plants? And then what are marginal but temperate plants? So things that are, you can grow them here, they're called hardy, but a lot of times people struggle with them. So the purpose of this workshop is to understand that there are broader options for gardeners here. You don't have to just stick with what people say you can grow. You can really push the envelope if you're willing to gamble a little bit, be okay with the risk, and be okay with sometimes the gamble not working out. And basically, I want to provide you guidelines to help you grow new crops. And it's more of a mindset of things you want to keep in mind, resources you might want to use, and techniques that can help you towards your goals. That's because I can't predict what you want to grow. There's so many different cultures and crops around the world and in our area that there's many things that I cannot just cover in this presentation. So I want to give you the tools and the mindset on how to solve those problems for you. So, first off, what is zone pushing? There's a lot of great Facebook groups, a lot of social media groups centered around this. So, it's being able to push what is possible to grow, especially growing things outside of the hardiness zone. So, for on that picture, this is a really popular Canadian YouTuber who grows subtropicals and tropical plants. You can see it's a little grainy in Canada, and he goes through a whole extensive winter protection system to make it work. Or there's things you can do. I believe this is a house in Portland. I just got from on a picture from online, and they're using the microclimate created by a south-facing front wall to grow citrus just right by the house. So you can do different things that can bend your zone, either a couple zones or by one or two zones, depending on how much time, effort, and investment you put in. So, what are subtropical crops? So, I'm talking about crops that you typically wouldn't be able to grow around here. On the picture here, excuse me, you can't see my hand. On the picture on the left, um, we have that's citrus. So that's actually mandarin oranges being grown in a high tunnel in the Willamette Valley. I'm based outside of Corvallis. So this is actually in a farm south of Corvallis where they grow mostly Oaxacan or particularly Mexican and Central American plants and herbs for the local community. And they're able to grow citrus in tunnels, and they're actually selling at the farmers market. You also have things such as hedychiums or gingers. These are flowering gingers that you typically wouldn't be able to grow in this climate, or you wouldn't think of being able to grow in this climate, but they're cold hardy and you can have them grow. So subtropical, really broad term, just something growing in the subtropics, not in the temperate zones, but a lot of times you can push them. So what about drier climate plants? A lot of the issues that people have here are not necessarily the cold. We have generally mild winters for our latitude, but for a lot of people that are trying to grow things like cactus, a lot of Mediterranean herbs, and even palms, excuse me, actually, that photo is not mine. I should have changed that. But the palm photo. But the issue is often we have very rainy winters. So the plants tend to drown or they start to succumb to root rot. So if you're trying to push a plant, you're trying to grow something different, you might want to understand its climate where it's from and see how you can modify the drainage and soil around that. And what I mean by marginal but temperate plants, so there's a lot of plants here that are cold hardy, but a lot of people either struggle with or they're not that reliable. So things like fuzzy kiwi, a lot of people think we can't grow them in Western Oregon. You can, you just have to accept that some years you might have a late frost and you might lose the crop. So oftentimes they don't work well in a commercial setting, but if you have a home garden, a protected area in the yard, they can grow relatively well because they can miss that late frost. You also have plants such as pomegranates. There's a lot of nurseries that are selling cold hardy pomegranates. The plants themselves are cold hardy, but a lot of times they might not have the heat to ripen fully. So a lot of times people will have insipid pomegranates where they're just not a lot of flavor. Or this picture I took at towards the end of the season, and the fruit had just not colored up. So they're cold hardy. They can grow. If you look at the zone hardiness, they're fine here, but you do want to give them a little extra help. And then there's things like a lot of stone fruit. People ha struggle here, especially with things such as pluots, apricots, and a lot of certain plums and even and things like peaches. And that's because it's not necessarily our cold, but it tends to be our combination of a cool, wet period in the winter. So if you can protect them from a cool, wet period or use appropriate dormant sprays, which I actually have another video about from my main job, um, you can really push what you can grow. So this farmer here, this is also around Corvallis, they're growing a lot of cultivars of tree fruit from the Central Valley of California that you cannot grow reliably outside here. And they're doing that using tunnels and then also planting in protected areas on the farm. So these plants, again, you would think when you order them from the nursery, they're hardy to zone 7 or below. You're like, oh, okay, we're zone 8. We should be fine. But oftentimes, you do have to take some steps to guarantee or increase your chance of success. We also have challenges being the Pacific Northwest. So we do have mild temperatures, which is a great thing going for us, but we have a relatively short warm growing season. So what I mean by that, we have a long cool growing season, so period of times where frost may occur, but the temperatures are generally low. But for warm season crops, as you would know if you grow peppers or a lot of heat-loving vegetables, we have a relatively short season for those. We also have a day length issue. We have very long days in the summer, which is fantastic for plant growth. But for a lot of subtropicals and a lot of tropical plants that you try and grow, it's actually that day length tells them to not flower. So they're not flowering and fruiting until the very end of the season when we get close to frost. If you ever try to grow chayote squash, that tends to be a problem. Also, a lot of people will try and grow things like loofah gourd here, and they run into that issue where they don't understand they have this huge, beautiful plant. It's covering the fence, covered in flowers, but it didn't start flowering or it's not setting fruit until the very end of the season, and the fruit doesn't have a chance to mature. So that's something you have to keep in mind. And like I said, we also have wet winters. If you look at that map, so what are those? Those are called Vavilov centers. So they're named after a Soviet era plant scientist who was actually killed because his people didn't like his theories in the Soviet Union, but he was more correct. Um, so he narrowed down areas on the world where most plant domestication occurred. This is not comprehensive. There's a lot of plants that were domesticated out of these areas, but you can generally see where much of our plants come from. So, such as things like squash, corn come out of Central America. So, you have a lot of things from the tropics and subtropics, and when you're planting them at a different latitude, you have to take account for that because it's easier to grow a plant on the same latitude, or excuse me, along the same latitude. But oh, I am messing up today. Excuse me. It's easy to grow the same plant, if you're at the same area closer or farther from the equator from where it originated. So the closer you are to the origin of that crop, the more likely it's easy to grow. That's not necessarily the case for everything, but it's something you want to keep in mind when you're selecting plants out of a seed catalog. So just kind of keep in mind, okay, where did this originate? If this originated in, say, area 1 or 2, which is firmly in the tropics, even if it's a sensitive, cool climate adapted plant, you might not have the greatest success than if you chose a cultivar from, say, 11 or 5, where it's just much closer to our latitude. So I just described a lot of work and extra steps. Why are you doing this when we have such a huge array of native plants and locally adaptive plants? And a lot of people generally wonder, like, what's the point of doing that? And sometimes I wonder that myself. But basically, there's a lot of reasons. There might be culinary reasons. A lot of people want certain foods from their culture. There's also the reality that a lot of foods that are grown anyway here are not locally adapted. For instance, a lot of peppers, they're from other places. So that's what you call a sweet potato green salad or camote top salad. Below you have these peppers from northern Mexico. You might have medicinal needs where you want for instance, that's bitter melon, where there might be traditional medicines. I'm not that type of doctor, but a lot of people really value that and want to have access to that. Below, you have turmeric being grown in Oregon. We can generally grow young turmeric. There's also aspects where you need alternatives. A lot of these crops that are from more southern areas, particularly the vegetables, such as black eyed peas and sweet potatoes, are resistant to many of the pests and diseases that affect many of the vegetables here. So broadening what you grow in your garden, whether it be plant or, excuse me, whether it be vegetable or flower, you can help reduce the likelihood that you'll lose everything to disease. There's also, of course, ornamental. That's I believe it's an air conditioner unit being covered by lab or batao beans. I think it's beautiful, or excuse me, hyacinth beans. Sometimes I forget to use the English term here. That is a hyacinth bean covering a an air conditioner unit. So see, there's what I would call a practical use and a beautiful use. There's also things like hardy banana. That's something I've recently gotten into where they just add a great feel to the landscape, and then I also use them in cooking, which we'll talk about later. There will be recipe breaks throughout this. So basically, we're going to go over what are the challenges in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, why try? We did that. How do we do this? And then get into some examples. So there's some home applications. This is actually my backyard last summer. I'll show you the more recent picture later on, but I'm growing chayote as well as hardy bananas, taro, edible sweet potato leaves on below, and I'm really stacking what I can in this space and seeing pushing what I can grow. So I recommend starting off with herbs and vegetables, and that's just because it's easier to start for most people. The seeds are relatively affordable. It's better to get the hang of something when it's cheap than to start buying, say, citrus or banana plants and then killing them all. At least for me, I don't like I don't like spending putting something I spent a lot of money in the ground and having it die. I like to be able to learn using stuff that I can grow from, say, lemongrass or sugarcane from the grocery store, or vegetable seeds that I can order and buy for relatively cheap, and be able to experiment with them. So that's just my recommendation. Uh, you want to focus on creating a microclimate to have success. So that could be done through a lot of different ways. That can be using large plastic containers. Uh, Black containers are great because they collect a lot of heat, and that can go into something such as creating a polytunnel. So just having a polytunnel just or a greenhouse is great, not in the realm of possibility for everyone. You want to account for your latitude, so start early indoors. Seek latitude adapted plants. So again, just be cognizant of where a plant originated. I want you to think like a botanist. Think where the plant originated. Think of its natural habitat. How can you recreate that? And then in reality, some things like we'll show fruiting bananas later. You do need a greenhouse for that here. You can only push so far without large interventions. You want to think that you can alter the space by creating heat sinks, protecting from winter winds, and shelter from excess winter moisture. And again, that depends on the plant you're growing. And this is something that people have been doing for a long time. These are the Moray terraces in Peru. They're a really fascinating feat of human engineering, and it seems to be in records that the Inca Empire used this. There's a 27 degree Celsius difference in between the bottom terrace and the top terraces, and they would actually use this area as a testing ground for different crops. And since the Inca Empire it was an expansionist empire, what they would do is they would bring plants from around their empire, test where they grow, test what terrace and what microclimate they know best, and then they would send and propagate. They would propagate those plants and send them to areas of the empire where that crop does not exist, but they think it could grow. So this was actually like a very old, long-lasting experiment station that they're using to improve the food security of the Inca Empire. So bending what you can do has been done for a long time. And if they can do this over a huge mountain range, you can do this in your backyard. So you can create heat sinks. That could be large black pots using thermal mass in blocks or in a planter. So if you have a large, heavy, like I say, a concrete planter, or using cement blocks to build a planter or a retaining wall, that can retain a lot of heat in a yard. Or you can plant against a south or west facing wall. The picture here, I believe this is outside of Paris at the time. So these are called fruit walls. Before greenhouses were very common and before you had widespread trade in a lot of Western European cities, I mean, fruit was very expensive. So specialized farmers would build walls and they would grow things such as peaches and stone fruit against these walls where they'd be protected against harsh winters and other climates. So again, it's been done before. You can do this with very little technology. You just need to be able to look around your yard, look around your garden, and see what can create some protection for a specific plant. You can also use specific winter protection. You can only do so much with a microclimate without some added help. For instance, on the left here, this is a picture of protecting bananas. This isn't from me, but my neighbors do this. I don't cover my bananas in the winter. My neighbors cover their bananas in the winter because they don't want the plants to die back to the ground. In a cold winter, hardy bananas can do that here. Um, so because they cover their bananas in the winter, when they start again in the spring, they still have up to their 20 feet of growth and the bananas get taller than their house and it's beautiful. And I should have took a picture, but I felt weird doing that. There's also things that people grow like dahlias where you do have to bring them inside. So if you're growing sweet potato, taro, dahlia, you cannot leave that outside. You do need to bring them inside a cool space like a garage and overwinter it that way. So again, you can only push that zone pushing techniques so far before some other interventions may be needed depending on the plant you want to grow. So you also want to consider creating a well-drained spot. Again, here, for most of the plants people struggle with here, the enemy isn't the cold, it's damp feet in the winter. So consider raised beds or mounds for many crops, particularly if you're doing something like palms like this gardener. Select a naturally high spot in the garden. And then grit or rock mulch is common for some plants. So if people grow succulents or hardy cactus around here, oftentimes they will do that to minimize the amount of water that pools or the tendency for other mulches to create a damp spot by the base of the plant. So just consider that if that's something you want to do. So you can also use walls and courtyards again. So this is a picture in Japan. It's really common. This is something I've tried to do for my house is growing vines across the side too in the summer. And what they're utilizing is it's a place where the vines are warmer, so they get an earlier harvest, but they're also protecting the windows from the sun. So if you're reducing the cost for the AC unit, and that's what they would do is to help cool the apartments or cool the house. Over on the right here in the center, it's not a great picture, but this is a feijoa that I picked at Oregon State, or it's a pineapple guava. It's something you see a lot more common in California. This is actually very nostalgic for me, so I went off into the landscaping and picked it out of the. Don't tell the landscapers that I did that, but I did, and I ate it. But it's a guava that can grow here with some protection. So because the landscapers planted it in a protected courtyard, they're able to have successful fruit. This is also the only instance I've seen one successfully fruit and outside without added help like a polytunnel here. So I was very impressed that was just at my office, in my office courtyard. So again, finding a microclimate. When I bought my house and I knew I wanted a garden, don't worry, I didn't buy the house because I wanted the garden there. But I took stock of what I had and I realized that I live in a townhouse. I have this space in between two houses, the two buildings, so that creates a protected area. The sun goes it's sheltered from the north by my house. So area is very protected from winter winds. And there's walls and fences on all sides. So this area, I utilize it for a lot of my subtropicals because it's very protected. The rest of my garden, I don't really have a lot of pictures of subtropicals there because I don't grow subtropicals in much of my garden that isn't protected like this. So again, just look at your yard, figure out how the wind moves, what stays warmer, what's a little bit more protected, and then that's how you want to start experimenting. So, more creating a microclimate options. Consider investing in a polytunnel greenhouse or cloches to lengthen the growing season and increase the heat units, particularly if you're growing something like pomegranates or a lot of heat-loving vegetables. Black pots and clear or black plastic mulches can help warm soil. Again, if you're growing annual vegetables, those are very helpful. And then plant against a south-facing wall or find the warmest spot in your yard. And that's really where you're going to have success for a lot of these marginal plants. Now we're going to get into some examples. You can grow sweet potato here. A lot of people don't realize that you can grow sweet potato very well in Western Oregon. This is my friend Charlie Epps. She did a research project growing sweet potato in a high tunnel back at OSU. This is from a few years ago. And then on the right here, this is actually a local farmer who's growing sweet potatoes outside, and he took me to his property, and they're using clear plastic mulch to ensure the root bed is very warm and to minimize weeding. So growing sweet potato, there's a whole lot of uses. I grew up eating the leaves a lot. So in a lot of Asian cultures, the leaves are what's more widely eaten. Of course, there's a whole range of different root types that you can use. My master's project was actually with the purple sweet potato back in Hawaii. Um, but there's a whole range of different tuber flavors. The entire plant is edible. And I want to mention sweet potato is not the same species as potato. So if someone says Todd Anderson said I can eat potato leaves, I'm specifically talking about sweet potato. So a recipe break, something that I like to do is sweet potato leaves, ensalada en tablas con camote. So that's something that it's just salad of a of a sweet potato tips. So these are the young growing shoots of the sweet potato, or the new leaves. You blanch them, you mix them with red onion, some chopped tomato, ground black pepper, some fish sauce if you like it. If not, you can omit it or use soy sauce or something else that's salty, or even just a pinch of salt. And then vinegar, or you can use calamansi, which is a Philippine lime, or you can use lemon juice or any other citrus juice to taste. And then I like adding diced mango, or if I have any seasonal fruit, I like chopping it up and adding it in there. And that's actually a really nice salad. And this is one that my mom made last time she visited me. You can also just steam sweet potato. That's just steam until done. That's how I love them. Um, you grow sweet potatoes from something that's called a slip, and a very common question is, what is a slip? So you grow sweet potatoes from what's basically an adventitious growth or a sprout that comes off the side of the root. You don't want to cut up a sweet potato, so you take these rooted sets and then you plant them, and then you can, yeah, basically that's how you propagate sweet potato, and that tends to confuse a lot of people, I noticed. So what's really common is you'll get a sweet potato, put it in water, or you can put it into a large pot. They'll sprout, and then you just pull off those offsets, and then when it's warm enough, you stick them in the ground. So that'll be May or even late May, early June in our region. This bed here, this is from Mississippi State University, and in warmer regions, what's really common is they'll put plastic on the ground and or excuse me, they'll plant the roots right on the ground and they'll cover it with plastic. And then as those pop up, they'll use those to plant the field. We tend to be in too cold of an area for that. You're going to want to do this inside or in a greenhouse. Ways to grow for roots. Sweet potatoes really value, they don't like our big temperature differences in day and night cycle. So if you want roots and you want a guaranteed roots, I really suggest using clear plastic mulch or black plastic mulch to increase the heat of the root zone. Otherwise, I suggest you grow them for leaves, and that's just because sweet potatoes really need a warm root zone to develop. Otherwise, the cold night signal to the plant that there's no need to store, basically not no need to form those roots. So they just keep growing vegetative growth. So ways to grow sweet potato, you can grow them in a high tunnel. I've done that successfully, and I do it for the leaves. And then this is for a farmer growing them in the field, and they're using a clear plastic mulch to again increase the heat in the root zone. Sugarcane, that's something I've been experimenting with growing. So sugarcane, I what I did is I went to a local market in Salem. I saw they're selling purple sugarcane, and I took a long stalk. When I took the stalk, I cut it up and I placed some of it in water. A lot of them rooted. Excuse me, a lot of them, some of them rooted, some of them rotted. So I just made sure that I changed the water every day, kept an eye on the cuttings, and if there's anything that was rotting, I just removed it because the smell was really bad. Eventually, they sprouted, and in the spring, I was able to pot them up. I kept them on my windowsill, and then in and late May, early June, I potted them into this large pot, and I put them outside. Um, they did okay, and then I brought them inside. They almost died in the winter, and then I put them back out again, and that's what we have on the right. So these are 2 years of growth of sugarcane. You can grow them here, but honestly, if I would recommend having a uh, something like a greenhouse to actually have good, successful sugarcane growth. Banana. So growing hardy banana is something I've really got into recently. They're called musabasju or Japanese fiber banana, and they're very useful for creating a tropical atmosphere. As you can see, this is one of my plants for my yard. That we also use them in cooking. So this is something that when my family was visiting, I actually cut a lot of the leaves off of my banana plants and we grilled them. So we ran them over the flame, and then that kind of cured them. And then my family was taking them back to California to distribute amongst all the extended family. So these are great. What's unique about hardy banana is they'll die down to the ground in the winter if we have a cold winter, and then they'll resprout. You're not going to get edible fruit from them unless you can protect the stalk in the winter, which I don't bother with because they'll just come back and I grow them for the leaves. You're probably not going to get an edible fruit, and what does form is very seedy. So that's just something to keep in mind. Um, Again, this is called Musa basjoo. If you're going to start growing a subtropical perennial, this is a great starter plant. They're widely available and they're cold hardy at least to zone 7 without protection. They might die to the ground in cold winter, but mine have done fine. Recipe break. So I do fish cooked in banana leaf. I thought I had a picture of the fish itself, but apparently I just had a picture of the cookout. Um, So what I like to do and what I like to use the musa basjoo leaves for is cooking seafood and even vegetables. So I'll usually take the leaf and I'll stuff it with a whole clean fish or fillets, whatever I have. I've done salmon, I've done tilapia, whole or in fillets. I put onion, tomato, sliced pepper, a stalk of lemongrass. I forgot to put this in here, but a lot of times I'll put a piece of ginger or two just to add some more flavor. I pick a seasoned salt like garlic salt and pepper, sliced citrus of your choice, a little drizzle of olive oil. You wrap it in the banana leaves, and then I like to wrap it in foil as well, just so it really seals. and then you put it in a dish because if you don't wrap it well, it will leak. I've learned that. And then you bake it for about at a 400 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. I know it sounds a little high for fish and a little long for fish, but because it's in that protected packet, this allows the banana leaf to really steam and release a lot of flavor from the aromatics and the leaf itself. And I really like it. I think it's a beautiful way to cook fish and other vegetables. Something else I'll do, I'll take potatoes or eggplant and I'll do the same thing. And I have a vegan friend and I'll just do that for them. So that way they have a side dish as well. Edible bananas, people have asked me that before here. There is a successful farmer in Oregon that is growing racks of bananas. You can't really see it here, but those are all edible bananas. They're growing in a high tunnel. And they do produce racks of bananas that the community eats. They're a Oaxacan specialty farm in south of Corvallis, and they're able to do this because they have a heated greenhouse. I have not seen anyone succeed with edible banana for the fruit outside with anything less than a heated high tunnel. So, but I just want to mention that you can do it. This farm does do it. They also grow beautiful sugarcane in this covered area and a lot of Central American herbs. So, yeah, when people say you can't do it, you can. It just takes a lot of work and investment. So, be able to choose if you want the easy way out, I'd suggest do the hardy banana, value it for the leaves and for the appearance. If you really want a struggle or if you want to invest a lot, then you can try the edible bananas here. I want to talk about a really easy example too, lemongrass. So lemongrass is something that you can easily start from the grocery store. That's how I do it, is I'll buy lemongrass stalks in the spring, very early spring, and I'll root them in water. And after they start growing roots, I'll pot them up on my windowsill. And by May or June, when it's warm enough, I'll stick them around the yard. And I enjoy them as ornamental plants in the yard. I might take some leaves here and there, but really, oops, excuse me, I'll go back to that. So really, I'll grow them in the yard, and then I'll pull them up in the winter, clean them off, and then freeze them. So then I have something to use all year. So things that I'll use them for is I'll use them for lemongrass tea, where again I have I recently harvested my lemongrass for the year. It's all in my freezer. I'll take the lemongrass, chop it up, boil it, and then if I'm feeling so inclined, I'll add lemon, ginger, mint, or sugar and honey. And it's a really great drink, whether it's cold in the summer or hot in the winter. I really enjoy it. Sometimes I'll basically boil a lot of lemongrass, let it cool overnight, and I'll fill that tea in my water bottle. And so it's just something I enjoy. What I was also saying is the main reason why I grow lemongrass, it's a very easy plant to grow here in the summer. It won't overwinter outside, despite I had a plant overwinter last year, but typically it won't. I'll take the leaves, I'll crush them up, and I'll put them on top of rice before I turn on the rice cooker. So basically, put the rice in the rice cooker, cleaned rice, filled it with water, put the lemongrass on top, set it to cook. The whole house was gonna smells great. It smells like lemongrass rice, and it gives the rice a very nice flavor that to me is very nostalgic and is a fantastic way to use it, I believe. So again, easy to grow, easy to experiment with. The next demonst example I have here is ginger. So I grow ginger. These pictures aren't mine, and I don't know why I don't take pictures when I do things. But what I'll do is in the late winter, I'll go buy organic ginger from the store. I usually say organic ginger just because conventional ginger is often treated with a hormone to discourage it from sprouting because the store doesn't want these to sprout when they're stored. So I'll buy them. I'll typically wash them in warm water, maybe with a little soap, and that's just to get off any potential diseases, which I've had before occur before when I haven't done that. And I'll also do that to wash off if there is a hormone on it. So I'll take that. I'll either let the ginger dry for a day or two, and then I'll put them in either a inch of water, so it's not fully submerged, just a little bit of water in like the bottom of a jar or a container, and I'll let them sit there until they start to sprout. I usually use takeaway containers. Once they start to sprout, I'll transfer them into a pot, and then when it's warm enough, again, late May, early June, that seems to be the magic time of year for a lot of these warm season vegetables and subtropicals. I'll move them out to my garden. So I grow ginger, and you might be wondering, okay, Todd, ginger is very cheap to buy in the store. What are you doing? You spending a lot of time? I like growing ginger because I can get the entire plant. The whole part of the whole ginger plant is edible, and you can't buy most of that in stores. There's also when you have the way the ginger is here, this is called young ginger. This is the stage that you can mostly get it to in Oregon. Ginger takes 9 months to mature. So if you don't have a 9 month warm growing season, you're going to have to be okay with it being what's called young ginger, which is great because that's actually very expensive. Um, I'll take the young ginger, I'll wash it off, and I'll freeze it. And then I'll use it just like I would use mature ginger throughout the year. And then I'll use the ginger stalks, and this is actually ginger flower. You cannot buy this at stores. You have to, if you want it anywhere outside the tropics where it's grown culturally, because a lot of places that grow ginger will not harvest the flower. You need to grow this ginger, get it to flower, and harvest it. And I use the ginger and the stalk for cooking as well. I use it the same way that I would use the root, but for me, it gives it a much more gentle flavor. I'll also take a flower and I'll rake it up and I'll do it like the lemongrass, just on top of the rice when I'm cooking. And it really creates a beautiful smell and a beautiful flavor to the rice. So to recap, you want to research your plant's needs, seek fast maturing varieties, seek varieties from similar latitudes if you want good high chance of success, and accept compromise. If you want fruiting bananas, you need a heated greenhouse. If you're okay with not having fruiting bananas and are okay with hardy banana, the Musa Bajiju, you can grow that outside and just cover them or leave them to die back in the winter. Uh, sweet potatoes. Growing them for the roots here is a challenge unless you want to use black plastic mulch or something else to create a lot of heat in the root zone. You can compromise, grow them for the leaves or as an ornamental. And I think, push what you can do, experiment, and know when to accept compromise is my thought. So yeah, these are some useful resources. So you make sure you're not planting anything invasive. And the link below is to understand hardiness zones. I'll send them over to Hope, so make sure that these resources get out to you all. Thank you. A little early, but I can take questions.
All right. Well, Todd, thank you so much. And there are some questions here, so let me sort through them.
That's great. And I
Um,
can go back to any slide that's needed too.
okay. Oh, well, here's one. I will. What plants do you recommend if there are wild rabbits in the garden?
Oh, I'm gonna be honest, rabbits can do a lot of damage. My Okay, I don't want to be, sometimes a fence is better, but I would recommend my understanding is a lot of herbs are not bothered by rabbits, and that might be wrong, but I know a lot of people have had success with, for instance, I've had rat issues in my garden,
Mm-hmm.
so I grow the vegetables at a friend's house where I can plant it away from the house. And now I grow a lot of Mediterranean herbs and the subtropicals around my house, and they seem to not like that. You might have good success with something that smells strong, and the rabbit might not want to eat it.
Okay. And when you say your house, you live in Corvallis,
Oh,
correct?
excuse me. Yes, I live 8 miles north of Corvallis in a Dare village in a townhouse. So I deal with a lot of limited space and trying to figure out what to do with a small area of ground and mostly containers.
Okay. All right, let me sort through these. Um, oh, so here's some. Brenda says she has many avocado plants started from seeds. What does she do now?
So I have that as well, and they're living in my office. I wish should have brought them here. This is my home. So I do know people who have grown avocado as well as houseplants. And at the community garden that I used to be at, there's someone that grew them where they would move them in and out. And we did get them to flower. They never got them to fruit. And that could just be because they grew them from seed like 3, 4 years ago. The plants are young. If you want them to fruit, honestly, a very protected area outside during the summer, and then you can bring them back in. So similar to how many people do citrus or a greenhouse. Or you can just be happy with them as a house plant and enjoy their foliage.
Yeah.
That's one
Okay.
of the things is compromise. I want to add that there's a lot more uses to just the avocado than just the fruit. One of my colleagues, his wife is from central Mexico, and they'll use the avocado leaves similar to bay leaves. So they'll plant the avocado seeds in the yard just to harvest the leaves in the summer. So there's a
Wow.
if you want to do it that way, I'm not too familiar with how to use them for cooking, but I do know certain cultures do use the leaves as a flavor enhancement. So there's so many different uses for these. So even if you can't grow them for the fruit, you can still get that connection, grow that plant for use, and enjoy them the way you can here.
Okay. Now, um, so how Brenda asks, how small an area can you grow sweet potatoes in and be successful?
I'm going to say to have at least a 15-gallon container. I mean, that's
Okay.
not going to produce a lot of sweet potatoes, but that should be enough for at least a meal. And if you enjoy that, people will grow them in large plastic trash cans. That's a great option. You don't need a whole lot of space, but that's just something to consider.
Okay. And can you overwinter ginger? You say it takes 9 months.
Here, I'm going to zoom through my slides really quick. Don't get seasick. But some gingers you are able to overwinter reliably. So this picture, this is Heidicium. This is a ginger family plant. Those overwinter fine. I believe they can go even colder than where I'm at. So Heidiciums and I there's some things called ginger lilies, which are also other types of Heidiciums, can overwinter. Um, Edible ginger, typically not. And I do want to mention that these ornamental gingers they might smell very similar to edible ginger, but they have compounds that can be damaging to the liver. So you don't want to mix those up. So yes, there are ginger that overwinters here, typically not edible ginger, turmeric, or galangal. Those tend to
No.
have to be grown in the summer.
Okay. And do you have to buy lemongrass fresh each year, or can you propagate it from your cuttings from the previous year?
So I should have brought I have in the next room. So actually, this year, so what I did is I pulled up the plants and I separated them out and I potted them up, and they're in my windowsills throughout the house. Um, so I'm doing that. This is the first year I'm doing that, and that's just because I know people who do that. I've lived in an apartment before, and last year I just didn't have the. This is it was moving into a house, so you can overwinter from cuttings last year. You just want to be cognizant that you don't introduce any diseases. I'd buy them new every year just because it was easier, and for me, um, I had a lot more to start with that way.
Okay. And here's somebody who's trying to understand microclimates. Um,
Yes.
and you're talking about polytunnels or greenhouses. She
Yes.
says, I typically do not use the greenhouse since it gets pretty hot, even with sunshade during the summer. Do these people keep their greenhouses going all summer?
Yes. So the farm that I'm showing here, where they're growing the mandarins and the various vegetables, and the ones farther way later in the presentation where they're growing actually here, this is the same farm where they're growing um, stone fruit and they also grow the bananas. What they do is they ensure that they have a lot of airflow. So that's something a very common mistake for people is they won't have enough ways to open up the greenhouse in the summer. So if you can open up as much airflow as possible during the summer, that helps to keep the greenhouse at least closer to the ambient temperature. Um, there's also a lot of the plants that they're growing are very heat tolerant. So they're bananas, they're subtropical, they're these cultivars of stone fruit from Central California, from the Central Valley. So the plants that they're keeping in the summer tend to be more heat tolerant. So it might be your opportunity to keep things in the greenhouse that you're not going to move out at all into the rest of the garden. And then just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, and I don't think you discussed taro. Somebody's asking, how do you grow taro?
Oh, I'm sorry. Taro, basically you take you can take the roots from the store. I'll move down to a container here. So this is what I do, and I also plant them in my yard. You can see them tucked in. I'll just take the roots from the store. In the spring, I'll plant them just as a bulb. So I'll plant them as a bulb, and then I'll just grow them from May to June through the summer, and I usually harvest the leaves. I will say that a lot of people do not have success with the roots here. So when you're growing the taro for the corm, or what people would call the root or the tuber, um, we don't have the day lengths for that. So a lot of times the plant will push off a lot of plant growth, basically a lot of leaves, not put a lot of stuff in the root. So harvest it for the leaves and you can use it for cooking.
Okay. Another question about microclimate. Um, do we also need to grow these types of plants in full sun, or can they grow in part shade?
So it depends. I'm gonna say it depends on the plant. Many of these can grow in part shade. This my yard's at. They would prefer part full sun, but I have part shade. You deal with what you deal with.
Yeah.
So that's my answer. And in general, that's for most plants. If you don't have full sun, part shade can do, just might not be as successful.
Okay. And here's somebody who has a calamansi lime
Oh yeah.
that lives indoors during the colder months. Do they dare try it in ground with winter protection?
Um, so there are some nurseries here that do hardy citrus, but I will say they are on very specific rootstock. And I'm gonna say best judgment or take a cutting off the tree so you don't lose the full tree and try that. It's so that's just my thoughts. That might not be. People do it here, but typically things like yuzu or other more cold hardy citrus, and they're from local nurseries that are on very cold tolerant rootstock. So
Yeah.
it's going to have to be a risk.
You, okay. Um, and this person wants to know about, would using part of a raised bed covered with black plastic be enough warmth for raising sweet potatoes for roots?
Yes, that's a great way to do it in a household or in a home garden.
Okay. Okay. I've got to sort through these now and see which ones we haven't gotten to yet. One is just a comment saying this is a fantastic presentation. What a great straightforward style you have.
Oh,
Thank you
no,
very
seriously,
much.
thank you. I was worried because I was,
You
workday,
were
I was trying
racing
to put this
along.
together. I was like, I'm not going to have time, but thank you.
Um, and this is just to confirm, ginger can't overwinter outside.
So, edible ginger, no, I've never seen it. I've never heard anyone that have had success. Ornamental ginger, there is ornamental ginger that can.
Okay. And here's somebody wants to grow in containers in her greenhouse. What type of soil do I need to grow bananas, taro, ginger, and the like?
They're heavy feeders. So, very rich soil, very compost and organic matter heavy. So, imagine you want something that is both very rich and holds a lot of moisture. So, these are the plants that you're going to put a lot of compost in that mix, if that helps.
Okay. Oh, and here's somebody just commenting for the one about rabbits. She grows chives around all of her vegetable beds and finds that that helps with the rabbits.
Oh, that's great information. No, that's good.
And here's somebody who hasn't had much luck with peppers in the garden, although she doesn't specify whether she's talking hot peppers or sweet peppers. I do have a greenhouse. Would they do better there?
Most likely, if you can pinpoint what's going wrong, I mean, the green peppers tend to do much better in heat in a heated area. I'm overwintering my peppers inside. I'm gonna treat them as a perennial, but they can definitely thrive in a greenhouse if you pinpoint what's going on. So I'd suggest just pinpoint what's going on because it might not be a heat issue, but once you
Yeah.
figure out what's going on, a greenhouse is a great option.
Okay. And Bartholomew asks, can you follow the same growing procedure as ginger for galangal and turmeric?
Yes, I can't believe I neglected to say that. I was in so much of a rush. Yes. So you'd follow the same pattern if you buy ginger or turmeric and galangal in the store, same exact protocol. I know galangal tends to be a little bit more cold hardy, but I think at our latitude, at least what I've seen in my experiments, it's not cold hardy enough for outside here as well.
Okay. And do you overwinter anything indoors? And if so, can you recommend a favorite grow light?
So I do. Um, my office and my downstairs is actually filled up with plants right now. I should have just done this downstairs, but I overwinter sugarcane, Christmas cactus that I have out in the summer, and then a lot of house plants that I have out in the summer, as well as my hot peppers. I'll take them in. I'll treat them like a perennial. They get a trim, they get brought in, they get put in a windowsill, they grow up over the summer, or excuse me, over the winter, and then they'll go back out in the spring. And then the lemongrass, like I said. As far as grow lights, a lot of people do. I don't. I if it can handle it, it can handle it. If it can't, it dies. That's my,
I know.
I spend enough money outside. I, I don't need to spend more money inside, but that's just me. I'm sure there are very good grow lights out there.
And speaking of grow lights, do you use heat mats for any of your plants
It is
indoor?
recommended. I do not.
Okay.
Just because, again, um, I know in the community garden we use heat mats for the sweet potato and for taro and for ginger. I don't just because I don't want to bother with that on my windowsill. And
Yeah.
it's just because this is a as a hobby for me, and you can be successful without it.
Okay. And Catherine says, a friend grew sweet potatoes in manure-rich soil very successfully. Would you recommend that?
Um, so manure-rich soil, what's great for sweet potato is it'll produce a lot of leaves. You want to be careful if
Okay.
you give it too rich of a condition, it can just produce a lot of foliage, which if that's what you want, that's great. If you don't, you might want to hold back off on some of the manure. But yeah, rich soil is great for sweet potato. Just be cautious not to over fertilize, and that could be a problem if you have too much manure.
Okay. And another sweet potato question. I have a sweet potato in my greenhouse that is growing slips. Should I harvest and plant these slips now or leave it until spring?
You can leave it until spring, or unless you want to keep them in the greenhouse and you treat it as a potted plant. And that's also going to depend if you're heating the greenhouse or not. If you're not heating the greenhouse, I would wait till spring or treat it as a house plant.
Okay.
They're not going to survive outside right now.
Yeah. And speaking of sweet potatoes, are there any particular varieties that grow best here?
Yes, I think it's on the market now about Cascade. That's really well reviewed by local growers. It's relatively new. It just came out, I think, like last year from Washington State University.
Well, the name would make you think that it would grow here, right?
Yes, yes. Well, it was selected here. And actually the picture of the local farmer that I showed had it outside. That was Cascade, and that's a very well reviewed variety here. If you also look at catalogs, look for short day or short season sweet potato varieties under 90 days. So those are
Okay.
what's going to be most successful for roots here.
Okay. And the final question, and a more sort of this is a broader one. Have you noticed any change in the last few years with global warming making this pushing the zones easier?
So I will say commercial growers have noticed a change. I've lived here for 5 years. I haven't been long enough to say.
Yeah.
I know that is a common conversation, and that is something that people have been noticing that have been here much longer. In my personal experience, I don't think I have enough years here to be able to speak from personal experience.
Okay. Well, Todd, thank you very much. This is wonderful. And you can tell from all the questions that you really had an engaged audience.
Thank you.
So we very much appreciate this. And we're now going to switch over to our chapter meeting. And if you're a Washington County Master Gardener, if you would please hang in here because we need to vote on our budget. And everybody else, thank you so much for a good evening. And we'll see you next month. Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Okay. Well, whew. Let me bring up the agenda and let me get let's try this. Share screen. Oh, that's not it. Cancel that. All right. Tara, am I sharing screen?
No, ma'am, I do not see it yet.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got it up on my screen. Let me get it up. Sometimes I get this just fine, and then other times I do not. There's that. Is it up now?
Yes, ma'am, just came up.
I wish I could memorize what it is that I do when it works. Okay, everybody. So great presentation tonight. Moving right into the meeting, the Master Gardeners of note are the Seed to Supper volunteers. I hope you read about the program, which wasn't very active for a while and has now come back, is being brought back and is being run by the chapter. And Yvonne, Corbett, Julie, Stephanie, Anjali, Badrinath, Lakshmi, Kate, and Wendy were the participants this year. And it was really great to be bringing Seed to Supper back into the program. So I hope that we are continuing it next year and we'll have more people involved. We'll vote on the budget in a moment, but just to remind you all to renew your membership. You can do it right there. And when you go on and renew your membership, then you get into the directory. And the directory is how we know who everybody is and how to contact people for volunteer assignments or if they have questions. So it's very important to have you in the directory. So please do go on this link and renew your membership if you haven't already. And then two notices that were in last month's chapter meeting as well. A new vegetable garden is going to be starting up in the Ed Garden. And I wonder if maybe there's going to be some possibly unusual or semi-tropical plants in it. But at any rate, if you're interested in working with that, contact Helen Door below if you'd like to be involved. And we still have, there are still arborist chips left from that surprise delivery we had last month. So if you are interested in those, contact Sue Ryburn and she can tell you where they are and when to go get them. The Grow One, Give One is getting started. You can sign up for that on the member portal. Coming up soon will be the Garden Fest. So keep an eye out for opportunities to sign up for that, which will be on May 2nd this year. Coming up, we have a Mason bee cocoon cleaning class this coming Saturday, led by Ron Spendal. If you've got your own Mason bee cocoons that you would like to have some help with or some advice, bring them. If not, Ron has plenty of Mason bee cocoons that you can clean in person. I just finished cleaning mine last week, or I would be there with you. And then our next chapter meeting and presentation is What's Your Garden's Future with Leanne Locker and Brooke Edmonds. The leaders of the Master Gardener program and the Garden Ecology Lab at OSU. So now I'm going to bring up the, well, if I'm able to, let's see if I can bring up the budget, which I attempted. Am I still sharing,
Yes,
Tara?
ma'am.
Okay, so here is the budget, which has been out for a couple of months, so hopefully you've all had a chance to look at it. And it shows that we have a slight deficit of around $4,400, which is common for us to have, and frequently it doesn't turn out that way because we have underestimated our revenues or overestimated our expenses. But this is what it looks like right now. And I'm now going to go back into the, I'm going to stop sharing and go back into the more, polls quizzes. There we go. Okay, here is the question for the budget. Do you approve it or not approve it? And please press the button. Okay, so it looks, oh, there we go. Okay, 20 people have not yet voted, so if you haven't voted yet, please do. Okay, so I think that's as many as we are going to get. So it was approved. Thank you all very much. And I think that's all we have for this evening. So I wish you all happy holidays, and we'll be back together in January. Thank you all, and good night.